So the problem is a lot of people will be like, yes, Bernie's the man, of course, tax the billionaires. But it's like, all right, well, where's this money actually going? How are we going to fund all this? And that's the problem that I think people have is like, great ideas. Where's the math coming to this, though?
So there's some very simple answers to that.
What's up, y'all? So Kyle Kulinski went on the Patrick Bet-David podcast. They had a heated debate about basically society and how they think it should run. No matter what side you agree with, let's listen to their arguments and give our thoughts afterwards. And when it comes to PBD himself, do not mind the goatee.
What are you doing to get better? And if the answer is, I have a problem with that. I agree. I think that person needs to be held accountable.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, look, I think the problem is we're having two separate conversations. I think there's one conversation about the system and how we address the system. Then there's a whole other conversation about at the individual level, how do you treat people? What values do you impart on them? And I think on the values front, on the individual front, we agree 100%. Because, you should focus, you should try to create a culture of hard work. You should try to create a culture of people showing up, being passionate about something, giving their all to something. It's just, in my view, it's just two separate conversations where you could also have a separate conversation about what do we do with the system? What do we do with the tax rates? What do we do with the living wage law? What do we do about unions? And so that's where our disconnect is coming from.
Well, if you want to go there, because I want to go to a different topic.
Yeah, I just want to kind of revisit how this whole conversation started, because obviously we're trying to find some common ground here. But going back to, I think what you stand for with the social democracy is, you ever seen that video where dozens of kids line up for a race, and there's the coach being like, all right, take 2 steps forward if your parents are still married, and then kids take 2 steps forward. All right, take a step forward if you've graduated high school. Boom. And then you've seen this thing before. I don't know if you can pull that up, but basically it's an expose on however you were raised or whatever the merits you had or the benefits you had, you're going to have a leg up in life.
Right.
So, all right. So essentially the message was a lot of the black kids or the Latino kids or,
poor kids, poor white kids, yeah.
Even poor white kids for that matter, this understanding how privilege works. Okay.
So, by the way, I just interject. I'm sorry. I hate the privilege discourse.
I totally agree. I'm with you on this. Yeah. But all these kids start taking a step forward. Okay, great. So your baseline is you want everybody to start at the same starting point and just have a fair starting point, no advantages for certain kids over the others. And you talk about healthcare, free college, student loans, credit cards. But isn't that kind of the antithesis of America? Because, hear me out, you're a byproduct of what your parents decide to do. So if your parents work hard, pay their bills.
Is that right?
I think it is right.
Really? So if my parents are a scoundrel drunk, then I'm just destined to be fucked, and that's fine? I'm not. Why are you destined to be fucked? You can make a decision to actually clean up your act. You don't have to live because your parents fucked up. But if Pat basically spent his whole life reading books, working out, improving, raised his kids the right way, made millions and hundreds of millions of dollars, and Rob over here worked a 9 to 5, didn't read books, didn't improve, didn't pass down anything, knowledge, wealth to his kids, are you saying that Rob's kids should have the exact same starting point as Pat's kids? I think that's utterly unfair. Okay. So first of all, you said this is, kind of the antithesis of America. I totally disagree with that, because when you look at civil rights history, that was the core of what they were trying to do. Hey, it's unfair that we have our boot on the neck of this entire class of people. They're, minorities and they're treated unfairly. Let's just start treating them fairly. That was the core of that. And also, the New Deal. That was FDR coming in and saying, you know what? These, what he called economic royalists, have been fucking working people for far too long. The income and wealth inequality at the time was preposterous. It was called the robber baron era, because you had this top tiny sliver of the population that was making all the fucking money. Then you had these people who were working all day, every day with shit pay.
Industrial Revolution, aristocrats, fat cats, that whole thing.
All that stuff. And so
150 years ago.
So what I would argue is I think what I'm trying to do is harness the best of the American tradition. I think that social democracy is America at its best. That's what Social Security was, Medicare, Medicaid. These basic programs to say, I want people to have a fair shot. It's more, I think you're focusing more on the, let's punish the Mitt Romney types or whatever, where my point is, no, let's help the people at the bottom to get to a reasonable floor.
Can I respond?
Before he responds, I want to point out that the PBD lackey, Adam, try to equate working a 9 to 5 with being a failure in life.
made millions and hundreds of millions of dollars. And Rob over here worked a 9 to 5, didn't read books, didn't improve, didn't pass down anything, knowledge, wealth to his kids. Are you saying that Rob's kids should have the exact same starting point as Pat's kids? I think that's utterly unfair.
See, you let stupid, evil people talk enough, and they'll make arguments against equality and helping people and using our taxpayer money to help people as a system just because he knows a rich guy, which is ridiculous because I'm sure they have some type of producers or something that work in that show. Are those people failures because they work for you? When y'all go out to eat, are those people failures because they make coffee or they work at restaurants? When you guys buy houses, are those people failures because they build houses? Or people that work on roads? Is everyone who doesn't sell a pyramid scheme a failure? What a ridiculous argument. Kyle so far is completely right.
Sure.
100 years ago, FDR, Industrial Revolution, everything that Rockefellers, even up to civil rights, dude, I think your argument is completely fair. Meaning, like, of course,
right.
certain people were screwed. But it's been 50 plus years since then. At what point do we acknowledge, you know what? People, there's no systematic racism at this point. There's no the man keeping people down. Barack Obama became a president. Things have changed is what I'm saying. We're not back in the 1910s or 1870s or even the 1960s where people didn't get a fair shake. I think more than ever, people have the fairest shake they've ever had in this world. So at what point does that argument kind of get quelled? Meaning like, all right, we've addressed it. You're right, Kyle.
50 years ago was literally just your life ago. A lot of those people from the civil rights era are still around. Ruby Bridges is still around, still alive. He makes it seem like it was ancient history.
50 years ago, your argument held water like crazy. Does it still hold the same water today, though?
Yes, it does. You know what the number one cause of bankruptcy in America is?
Medical debt.
Correct.
Yeah.
You think that makes sense?
I don't, but...
So wait, let's just focus on that for a second. So we agree on that one. So that same spirit that we brought to the civil rights fight, to the New Deal fight, there's going to come a time when people look back at our era, let's say 50 years in the future, 100 years in the future, and they go, these fucking psychos were just sitting around when people were dying left and right and drowning up to their eyeballs in medical debt, and 45,000 people dying because they didn't have basic health care. There's going to come a time where we look at that with the same kind of scorn that we looked at segregation in the Jim Crow South. And that's what I'm just trying to...
I don't know if it'll be that level, but however, the question is...
The question understand.
And Bernie did a great job of this. This is the question of, is healthcare a right or is it a privilege, right? And then should the government pay for everything? Every time the government gets involved in something, it's going to get f***ed. But then you have these monopolies, these biotech companies, big pharma that are making, across state lines, this whole valid argument. But at the end of the day, who's paying for all this?
When it comes to healthcare, we're already paying for it, and covering everybody saves us trillions of dollars, no matter who you ask. Right-wing think tanks, universities, whoever does the study always agrees that we save anywhere between $2 to $5 trillion. But Adam doesn't really care about helping anybody because he sees helping people as a bad thing, as a negative thing, as a burden. That's why people like this should never be in any position of power over others or anywhere near society, because he doesn't view or value society as a whole, only the people with capital. And if that's how you feel, cool. But you shouldn't be in charge of anything because you're okay with people living a miserable life as long as it doesn't burden you. As long as you don't see the homeless people on your way to do the podcast. Because the question of who's gonna pay for it only comes up when it's time to help you. When it's time to cut taxes for the richest people that ever lived, there's never a debate about who's gonna pay for that. Never a debate.
Right? So you bring up the Scandinavian countries. You know how many people live in all of Scandinavia? All of Scandinavia. Sweden, Denmark, Norway, Iceland, Greenland. How many people you think?
Yeah, it's not many. I know.
It's like 20 million people.
I understand that.
There's more people in Texas and in Florida and California. We get 20 to 40 million. So I don't know if that argument can extrapolate because, number one, each of those countries operate independently. So it's 5 million apiece versus 350 million here. I just don't know how it's going to work and who's going to pay for it all. Bernie Sanders, to my final point, if you were just going based on personality and rhetoric, people are like, this guy's awesome. He's crazy. He's wild. His crazy hair. He's got that pizzazz, charisma. But then when you got to actually do the math, it's like, how the is Bernie going to pay all this?
Okay.
Same with AOC and the New Green Deal. So the problem is a lot of people will be like, yes, Bernie's the man, of course, tax the billionaires. But it's like, all right, well, where's this money actually going? How are we going to fund all this? And that's the problem that I think people have is like, great ideas. Where's the math coming to this, though?
So there's some very simple answers to that. First of all, there was a report that just came out not too long ago in the Responsible Statecraft outlet. The Pentagon just failed its 5th audit in a row. They cannot account for, I believe the number was 59% of their funds.
We're talking defense.
We're talking trillions of dollars
missing.
Exactly.
Yeah, of course.
Missing. Now, somebody might want to check, Dick Cheney's wallet, and somebody might want to check what was going on at Halliburton, what's going on with Kellogg, Brown and Root, and all these Raytheon, Boeing. We spent over $1 trillion. I think it's actually close to $2 trillion on this plane called the F-35-2. Which doesn't even fucking fly right to this day. Okay, so when you say, man, how are we going to pay for it? That's my first answer. If we cut our military budget, and I'm not exaggerating here, by 50%, we would still have the biggest military in the world by far, and it's not even close. Okay, so that's
how much is our military budget?
So there's the on the books answer, then there's the off the books answer.
Go on the books.
Yeah, the on the books answer is about $850 billion a year.
And how much? So do you know what percentage? I think 90% of our budget goes to
well, it's okay.
Social Security,
yes, but
Medicare, Medicaid,
discretionary versus non-discretionary.
Entitlement programs. That's where all our money is going. All of it.
Well, again,
defense is like 5-10% at that. A lot of people want to say, all right, if you cut a couple $100 billion here, there's trillions and trillions and trillions going to Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. So that's where the entirety of our budget is going, and it's getting larger and larger as boomers, 10,000 baby boomers turn 65 every single day. Like, what do you want to do with those programs?
So, first of all, those programs, there's the discretionary portion of the budget and the non-discretionary portion of the budget, and those are viewed as kind of off the table. Nobody touches this. In other words, you don't need Washington to step in every year to re-up Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. They're sort of off on their own, and I think it's a good thing that they're not addressed every single year, because I don't think we'd ever fucking renew healthcare for old people.
I'm gonna stop here, but the last thing he mentioned there was entitlements like Social Security. But it's not an entitlement. You pay for it your whole life. Even if you want to use that term, you paid into it. You are entitled to it. It's your money. It's either Adam has a gross misunderstanding of how society and government works, or he purposefully doesn't care and wants to misinform his own viewers. Let me know what you think about all this in the comment section below. And if you want to watch Mehdi Hassan make a show host rage quit his own show for being an idiot, click this video right here. Subscribe to the channel. Peace.